When I was a kid, I'd love to scribble all over my colouring books. Now, if you happen to be one of those kids, I encourage you to follow along and learn a little bit more about one of the most versatile effects for creating detailed animated graphics inside of After Effects, the scribble effect. Now, the scribble effect likes to work with paths. So let's go ahead and create a new layer solid so we can add a path to our scene. Make sure you have the timeline selected and then press Command Y or Control Y on the PC to create a new solid. Go ahead and click the Make Comp Size button to make sure that the layer is the size of your composition. Then let's change the color from black to this blue color. That way we're just not creating something on solid black. Now click OK. Now let's start with a square. I'm going to go ahead and grab the rectangle tool. If this tool is inactive for you, just keep pressing Q on your keyboard until you get to the rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag in my canvas and then hold down Shift to create that square. Now with the square in the middle of the scene, we're ready to add our scribble effect. I'm just going to go to the Effects and Preset panel over here and start typing the word scribble. And there it is. It's an 8-bit effect. I can drag it and drop it right onto my shape, and when I let go, I already have an effect that's created. One of my favourite things about this effect is the fact that it's already animated. If you go ahead and load up a RAM preview, check it out. Once the RAM preview is loaded, you'll get a real-time playback, hopefully on your system, that will show you how these scribbles are working. Now, the one setting I make adjustments to the most in Scribble are start and end. So I'm just going to press the spacebar to stop playback here for a second and just scrub through the end parameter. As I scrub through, you can see I could control the animation of the appearance of the square. So let's go ahead and create an animation for that. We'll start at frame 0 and let's change the end parameter to 0. Go ahead and click the stopwatch next to end, and that'll set your first keyframe. Now let's have the square draw on over the first second. So click in the time and type 100 and enter on your keyboard. Now we'll change the end parameter to 100, and that's it. All we have to do is load a RAM preview to see how that goes ahead and draws into the scene. If that were it to this effect, this would be kind of a boring video. Let's go look at some of the other options that we have for that square. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer, because I do like the start of how this is set up. So I'm going to select layer 1 and press Command D or Control D on the windows to duplicate. And let's turn off the visibility of our background layer. Now with layer 1 selected, let's look at some of these different options. First option is mask. If we click on that, notice we have an option for mask 1. That's because we only have one mask in our layer. So if you go to the scribble, pull down at the top, notice we have an option for all masks, or all masks using modes. Well, we'll get to that in a quick second. Let's look at the fill type options. If I click on that, we have inside centered edge, inside edge, outside edge. Let's click through a couple of these. Centered edge, it centers the scribble on the path itself. Inside it puts it inside of the path. Outside goes on the outside. Now left edge and right edge are kind of interesting because they don't make much of a difference in terms of square. So let's go ahead and add another pathway quickly by grabbing our pen tool. And I'm going to click and drag a diagonal path here. And just to set that, we'll grab our selection tool. So now we have a second path on layer 2. Let's go ahead and select mask 2, and now we've got our scribble here. If we change the fill type from right edge to left edge, it's looking at the motion of the path that's being drawn. So this is the start and this is the end. The left edge is actually up here and the right edge is down here. If I rotate this around, so let's say we drew the path from this point to that point. Now you can more clearly see the left edge and the right edge. So outside, centered, inside. Obviously this is one path, so we're not going to get anything for inside. It'll all just depend on the specific shape that you have selected. Now before we explore some of these other options, let's go ahead and have Scribble create some text in the scene. Let's go ahead and grab our text tool, and we'll call this Scribble and press enter on your keypad. Or just grab the selection tool to set your type. Now I want to reposition my Scribble text down in the bottom of the panel. I can just go up under Effect and apply Scribble because it's not going to apply anything. It's looking for masks. So let's just delete that effect by pressing delete on our keyboard. What we need to do is turn the text into outlines. So in order to do that, let's leave our text layer selected and go up under Layer and choose Create Masks from Text. With those masks created, now we can go up under the Effects panel and apply our scribble effect. This is where things start to get really interesting. You can have it scribble individual letters, or you could just have it scribble all masks. Now notice it filled in the R's and the B's. Just to see this more clearly, I'm going to press Shift Command H to quickly hide the edges of our masks. If you change the option from all masks to all masks using modes, it will take into account the actual modes that were created to isolate the inside of each one of these layers. Now we could go through and adjust some of the other parameters, like let's say the angle. If you click and drag on the angle, you could change the angle of the scribble. The stroke width obviously makes it fatter or skinnier. If we looked at our stroke options, we can adjust the curviness. So for example, let's say I wanted this to look more like lassos from the Wild West. If we drag curviness all the way up, we can see we have a little bit more of that lasso look. I'm going to scroll in just by hovering with my mouse and scrolling up, and then I'll press the space bar and drag up to go ahead and reposition in the scene. Curving as variation will just allow me to create a little bit more variation amongst the curves. Spacing controls how dense the scribbles are. You can adjust the spacing variation to make it a little bit more random in its filling of the letter, and then path overlap is fun to control, how far it's actually overlapping the letters within the scene. Each one of these parameters you can create a keyframe for. Now before we stop with our scribble, I want you to look at the scribble type. Right now it's set to smooth. If we load up a RAM preview, you can see smooth creates kind of a smooth motion. I'm going to press the spacebar just so we can preview this. That's relatively smooth, and we can see a little bit from our other layer, but that's fine. If we go ahead and adjust our wiggle type from smooth to jumpy, now when we lit up a RAM preview here, you'll notice it's going to be much more frenetic in its actual change of that scribble. So let's go ahead and press the spacebar. It's a little bit more jumpy, if you will, and of course the last but not least option, you could change this from jumpy to static, and that would have absolutely no animation to this layer whatsoever. So as you can see with Scribble, we've created all different kinds of options, and while all these different options give you the ability to add keyframes, if you really want to add your animation up another level, go ahead and create duplicates of the Scribble layer, and then start using different blend modes and different Scribble settings to actually create layered effects with your Scribble.